The first thing that struck Christina wasn't the taste. It was the smell. Sharp, metallic, almost chemical, like rusting iron hidden beneath the warm cover of roasted beans. The steam rising from her mug curled into the air in delicate spirals, deceptively innocent. "Careful, it's hot," James murmured, sliding into the chair opposite her. His smile was easy, practiced. Too practiced. The dining room shimmered with the false warmth of family tradition. Nina's crystal chandelier scattering morning light, silver cutlery gleaming on linen, vases bursting with white lilies that smelled faintly of funeral homes. Christina shifted in her seat, trying to ignore the way her husband's eyes never quite met hers. For anyone else, this brunch would be ordinary. For Christina, it had become a ritual of survival. 3 years of marriage had taught her that betrayal didn't arrive in grand gestures. It came in teaspoons of sugar that tasted slightly bitter, in teas that left her curled in agony, in apologies that never explained enough. And always, Nina was nearby, smiling too sweetly, stirring her drink too slowly. "Don't you want to try it?" James asked. His tone was casual, but Christina noticed his knuckles whitening as he adjusted his napkin. "Made it just the way you like." Nina's laugh rang across the table, light and brittle. "He's been practicing. Who knew my brother had barista dreams?" Christina forced a smile, her heart thudding like a trapped bird. The smell pressed harder against her nose, pushing her body into alertness. Instinct whispered what logic resisted: don't drink. Not yet. Not ever. Outside, the neighborhood was bright and ordinary. Children biked past, cicadas buzzed. A lawnmower hummed in the distance. But inside Nina's dining room, the air felt too still, the silence between words too sharp. Christina wrapped her fingers around the cup, the porcelain warm against her skin. She raised it just enough to let the steam touch her face. Across the table, Nina leaned forward, watching with predator stillness. James glanced at his sister, then back at Christina. And there it was, the flicker. The too quick glance. The silent exchange. Confirmation disguised as nothing. Christina's stomach tightened. For months, she had dismissed her suspicions as paranoia, the whispered warnings of a mind bruised by visits and unexplained sickness. But now, with their eyes giving them away, she felt the truth crystallize like ice. They wanted her weak. They wanted her gone. She steadied her breath. If she faltered now, they would see. "Smells strong," she said lightly, lowering the cup just shy of her lips. "What blend did you use?" "Secret recipe," James replied, his grin faltering for a fraction of a second. Nina smirked, swirling her untouched coffee as if it were wine. "Let's just say it's unforgettable." Christina smiled back, but her pulse hammered. She knew what came next. She would need to be sharper, quieter, more calculating than both of them. Because this wasn't coffee anymore. It was proof. And proof could save her life. Christina let the mug hover near her lips, careful to tilt it just enough for the heat to fog her glasses. She needed time to watch them, to feel the room. Every second stretched like glass. Fragile and waiting to shatter. Nina leaned back in her chair, a picture of elegance in her cream silk blouse, but her eyes betrayed her. They weren't resting, they were calculating. Measuring, waiting. Christina thought of the ledger she had started months ago, hidden in the back of her desk drawer at work. A private log of every accident. The stomach cramps after Nina's Sunday roast. The dizziness from James's late night tea. The blurred vision that sent her to urgent care after brunch last month. At first, she had blamed herself. Stress, allergies, bad luck. But the ledger didn't lie. Patterns emerged in black ink, undeniable and damning. "Are you all right, Christina?" Nina's voice broke through, smooth as velvet and just as suffocating. Christina blinked, realizing her grip had tightened on the mug. "Just hot," she said, setting it back on the saucer. James chuckled, though it sounded hollow. "She's always been cautious with new things." "New things?" Christina echoed softly. His smile flickered. "You know, different blends, recipes. That sort of thing." She studied him. The man she had once loved for his steadiness now sat before her like a stranger. His loyalty misplaced, his warmth rehearsed. She remembered their wedding vows beneath the Nashville sky, his voice cracking with sincerity. And now, here he was, pouring secrets into her coffee. A low hum filled her ears, not from the chandelier buzzing overhead but from her pulse. She glanced at the clock above the mantel. 11:15. At noon she was supposed to review her final notes for Monday's presentation. The Henderson contract, the biggest pitch of her career. If she landed it, her firm would rise. If she failed, Nina's firm, the competitor, would take the account. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. The motive sat between them, more potent than the coffee. She straightened her posture, slipping the mask of composure back on. "It does smell strong," she said again, her tone almost playful. "You'll have to give me the recipe, James." I'm sure I could use the energy this week. At that, Nina's spoon stilled mid-stir. Just for a breath. Her hand froze before she forced a laugh. Oh, Christina. Always so ambitious. Don't you ever worry about burning out? Christina's smile tightened. Burning out is better than fading away. The silence that followed was heavy. Charged. James cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Nina sipped her water, careful not to touch her own coffee. Christina filed the image away like evidence. Nina sipping everything except the drink that matched hers. Her phone buzzed in her lap, a reminder alarm she had set for herself document. Don't forget. She tapped the screen dark again, but the vibration grounded her. Whatever this was, poison, sabotage, betrayal. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proof, and Christina was ready to collect it. The moment arrived disguised as clumsiness. Christina rose from the table with her mug in hand, murmuring something about needing to take a call. Her chair scraped softly against the polished hardwood. She let her knee brush the corner of the table, just enough to jostle the silverware. A fork clattered against porcelain. Oh, sorry, she gasped, steadying herself with an exaggerated stumble. In that heartbeat of distraction, she did it. Her cup slid seamlessly into the place where Nina's had rested, while Nina's cup, still untouched, found its way into her hand. The motion was fluid, practiced in her mind a dozen times but never before executed. James barely looked up from his phone. Nina offered a thin smile, eyes narrowing. But she didn't notice. Or perhaps she thought she didn't need to. Christina's pulse thundered in her ears. Her palms prickled with sweat as she carried the mug toward the sideboard, pretending to fuss with her phone. She positioned herself by the doorway, half-shadowed, her ears tuned to every breath behind her. And then, silence broke. The sound of porcelain touching lips. She turned her head just slightly, enough to see Nina tilt the cup and sip. The steam curled upward, wrapping her face like a veil. For an instant, Nina's expression was calm. Then a tremor. Her hand wavered. James. She whispered, too softly at first, then louder, urgent. James. The cup clinked against the saucer as she set it down too quickly. Her knuckles went pale as she gripped the edge of the table. Christina's stomach knotted, torn between vindication and horror. She had wanted the truth. But truth looked terrifying when it unfolded in real time. James shot up from his chair, the phone tumbling from his hand. His face drained of color. Nina. What's wrong? I don't. Nina's voice splintered. Her body shuddered, a violent ripple she couldn't control. Christina's throat went dry. Part of her wanted to rush forward, to save, to soothe. Another part, the colder, held her ground. This was the confirmation she needed. What did you put in it? Nina gasped, her words jagged between tremors. James bent beside her, panic tearing away his mask. It wasn't supposed to be. His voice cracked, raw with realization. Not your cup. The words cut through the air like a blade. Christina stepped out from the doorway, her phone raised, its red recording light blinking steady and unblinking. I thought as much, she said, her tone level though her heart rattled against her ribs. Nina's eyes widened, fury mixing with fear. You, she coughed, her body buckling forward. You switched. Don't stop now, Christina urged quietly, almost kindly, as if coaxing out a confession. Tell me. Sirens in the distance grew louder, closer. Christina had called them minutes earlier, her thumb steady on the keypad even as her hands trembled. The walls of Nina's elegant dining room seemed to close in, every crystal reflection catching fragments of betrayal. Christina knew in that instant her life had turned. She was no longer the victim of whispers and hospital visits. She was holding the evidence, and there was no going back. The ambulance lights washed the street in pulses of red and blue, bleeding through Nina's lace curtains. Inside, chaos fought against composure. Paramedics crouched at Nina's side, fitting an oxygen mask over her trembling face, their voices clipped and urgent. James hovered uselessly, wringing his hands, his mask of calmness shattered. She needs help. Please hurry. His voice cracked, but not with love. With fear. Fear of exposure. Christina stood near the mantel, her phone still recording, its lens steady despite the tremor in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to drop it, to let someone else handle this storm. But another voice, the one forged through months of doubt in hospital rooms, kept her spine straight. This is the moment. Don't look away. One paramedic glanced up. Did she ingest anything unusual? James hesitated, his eyes flicking to Christina, then away. It must have been an allergic reaction, he stammered. She's sensitive. Christina spoke before she could second guess herself. It wasn't an accident. Her words cut clean through the frantic air. The room stilled for a beat, all eyes on her. Nina's muffled protest broke through the mask. She switched. Yes? I switched, Christina said evenly, stepping closer, because I knew, months of sickness, months of lies. Every time I ended up in a hospital, you two were there, watching. Smiling, James's jaw tightened. Christina. Stop. Or what? She snapped, her voice trembling with both rage and release. You'll silence me like you silenced her. She tilted the phone just enough for the red recording light to gleam. It's all here. Every word. For a fleeting second, James looked small, cornered, exposed. But then his expression hardened, the calculation slipping back into place. You're destroying yourself, he hissed. Do you know how paranoid you sound? Switching cups, recording your own family. The paramedics lifted Nina onto a stretcher. Her eyes, glassy with both toxins and terror, found Christina's. There was no sisterly warmth there, only fury at being caught. You'll regret this, she rasped. Christina's throat tightened, but she forced herself to hold the gaze. No, Nina. I regret trusting you. The stretcher moved, and the room emptied of urgency, leaving James, Christina, and the faint echo of sirens fading into the humid air. James stepped closer, lowering his voice, intimate and venomous. If she talks, we're finished. Think about what you're doing, Christina. Think about your career, your name. No one will believe this wasn't just some hysterical mistake. Christina's chest ached with the weight of his words. A part of her wanted to crumble, to doubt herself again. But another part, the stronger part, remembered the ledger. The fevers, the dizzy spells that weren't mistakes but patterns. She straightened. Then let them hear it all. The trial, the board, the whole damn city. Outside, the ambulance whirred away, carrying Nina and the poisoned truth into the night. James's face twisted, rage warring with desperation. For the first time, Christina saw it clearly, she wasn't the one on the edge of losing everything. He was. And she was done being quiet. The fluorescent lights of Nashville General hummed like a warning, buzzing faintly above the sterile hallway. Christina sat rigid in a plastic chair outside the trauma bay, the recording still glowing on her phone screen. Every second replayed Nina's broken words, James's slip, the damning truth etched forever into digital memory. The door swung open. Dr. Phillips, tall and unflinching, stepped into the hall. She's stable, the doctor said, voice clipped. But the toxicology confirms what you suspected. This wasn't food poisoning. This was deliberate. Christina's breath left her chest in a rush. Not vindication, not relief. Something heavier, like grief for the years she'd wasted believing in love that now felt like theater. Behind the doctor, a nurse wheeled out a tray stacked with evidence bags. Tiny glass vials glinted under the fluorescent light. Their labels clinical, their contents lethal. Christina recognized the handwriting on the notes taped to them. James's neat, accountant-like script. Dosages, reactions, the hallway blurred. Her body tightening against the urge to retch. Where did you get those? Her voice cracked as James appeared at the far end of the corridor, escorted by 2 uniformed officers. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his tie askew. But his voice strained for composure. This isn't what it looks like. I was trying to protect you, Christina. The officers slowed, letting him take one cautious step closer. His eyes locked onto hers, pleading, desperate. You push yourself too hard, Nina said. She said if we could just slow you down, you'd thank us later. It was never supposed to be dangerous. Christina rose from her chair, her phone trembling in her grip. Slow me down, she repeated, her voice hollow. You poisoned me. You made me doubt myself. Every fever, every collapse. I thought I was losing my mind. And you stood there, holding me, pretending to care while taking notes on how long it took for the pain to set in. James flinched, as if her words were sharper than any handcuffs. I didn't want to lose you, he whispered. But I was already losing everything else. My career, my name, my place. Nina promised you revenge. Christina cut in, her tone hard. And you chose her. The officers closed in. But James surged forward one last time, his voice cracking. Christina, please. You know me, I made mistakes, but you love me. Her phone screen glowed as she tapped send. The recording, the texts, the ledger, all transmitted to her lawyer in a single sweep. The weight of 3 years left her chest with that one movement. No, James, she said, her voice steady now. I loved who I thought you were. Not the man who tried to erase me. The click of handcuffs echoed down the hallway, sharp as a gunshot. James's shoulders sagged, his head bowing as the officers pulled him back. Christina's hands shook, but her voice didn't falter as she turned to the doctor. Run every test you need. Compare everything, I want the truth on record. All of it. Because truth, at last, was hers, and nothing could silence it again. 1 year later. The dining room where it all began existed only in memory. The chandelier still hung in Nina's house, But the chairs had been sold off, the silverware repossessed, the vases of lilies replaced with court transcripts and dust. Christina hadn't stepped foot there again. She didn't need to. That house belonged to another life, one she had already buried. Now she stood behind a podium, beneath the vaulted ceiling of the Nashville Business Leaders Conference. 1,000 eyes fixed on her, waiting. The microphone carried the subtle tremor in her breath, but her voice, when it came, was clear. Success, she began, was not just about talent, or even hard work. It's about trust. About integrity. It's about knowing who stands beside you, and who stands against you, even when they smile as though they love you. As she paused, letting the words echo. There were no theatrics, no rehearsed crescendos. Only the raw steadiness of someone who had lived through betrayal and survived. Across the room, young professionals leaned forward, pens hovering over notebooks. Christina saw her younger self in their eager faces. Hungry, driven, blind to the dangers of misplaced faith. She continued. For months, I thought I was losing myself. My health, my sanity, my career. I was wrong. What I was losing was the illusion that the people closest to me were protecting me. And once that illusion was gone, I found something stronger than fear. Her fingers rested lightly on the podium. I found proof. And proof, when you trust it, can change everything. Applause rose, warm and steady, filling the hall. Christina smiled. Not the strained smile of a woman pretending to be fine, but the quiet curve of someone who had rebuilt herself brick by brick. Later that evening, alone in her office, she opened her email. A message from the Henderson account sat at the top of her inbox. 3 more years renewed. She exhaled, the smallest laugh escaping her lips. Victory didn't feel like champagne or fireworks. It felt like stillness, safety, control. On her desk, tucked inside a folder, lay the ledger she had once kept of every accident. She hadn't thrown it away. She couldn't. Each line was scar tissue in ink, a map of the road she'd walked. She closed the folder gently. Not with bitterness but with reverence. Through the window, the city lights shimmered against the dark river. Somewhere downtown, James and Nina sat in prison cells, their futures narrowing with each passing day. Christina didn't need to know the details of their lives anymore. She had already won the only victory that mattered: freedom. She turned off the lamp, her office sinking into shadow. For a long moment she stood in the quiet, listening not to sirens or monitors or lies whispered over coffee, but to the steady rhythm of her own breath. The world outside moved on, and so did she. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in breaking others down. It's in refusing to be broken yourself.